Welcome to the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. I'm your host, Anna Gray. The best thing about being a nurse and entrepreneur over the last 25 years are the relationships I've developed and the people I've met. As a legal nurse consultant, I wanted you to hear from those amazing people in the legal and healthcare communities. I wanted you to hear who they are and to celebrate them with me. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered. Let's dive into the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. Welcome to the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting Podcast. I'm really excited to talk to my guest here, who was so nice and hopped on this call and made herself available. So I really appreciate you, Ashley, for showing up for this call and getting to know you. I'm super excited. So thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Okay, Ashley. So where in the world are you coming from?
So I live right now in Central Valley in California. I've been here for the last 15 years. I actually grew up on the East Coast. So I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is known for being Amish country. Mm-hmm. And throughout my career, I got into travel nursing. And right when the economy got really bad back in 2008, 2009, travel contracts were hard to get. And I called up my recruiter and I was like, hey, I need something. So she's like, how about Modesto, California? I was like, sold. Where's that? She's like, I don't know. Google it. So I came out here for a 13-week contract, and that was 15 years ago. And I've been here ever since.
Wow. Okay. So let's unpack this a little. So you grew up in Amish country. What was that like?
It's so much different than anywhere else. It's very conservative. There's still parts of the county that don't have electricity running to them just because the Amish don't use electricity. When you're out driving, it's a whole different dynamic because there's horse and buggies on the road. And you have to, like, if it's a double-lined road, you're technically not allowed to pass the horse and buggy.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
But it's an amazing area. It's grown a lot since I was a kid. It's definitely not all rural and Amish country like most people think. It has become a very touristy area, but it was an awesome place to grow up. Very kind of small town feel. Lots of wide open spaces for people to run around, and great for kids. Amazing place to grow up as a kid.
Mm-hmm. I bet. Pretty safe. Do you still have family there?
I do. Actually, I just flew back from visiting them yesterday. Mm-hmm. So my whole family is still out there, and they love it.
How often do you get a chance to go back there?
Not often enough. So before COVID, we used to go back a couple times a year. Mm-hmm. And then COVID happened, and I have little kids, and it just got so hard to travel with all the masking and the restrictions and the vaccination requirements. And so sadly, 5 years went by without me making it back. So this was the first time in 5 years.
Oh, wow. That's so great that you were able to get back. But yeah, I know that it was that COVID, we always call it like the COVID blip. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like this blip in time that just really, you realize how long a period of time that was. So, yeah. Okay. So did you go to school out there, or did you like in the same town you grew up in, or did you travel somewhere, went to school?
So I got into nursing actually not to be a nurse, oddly enough. I decided to become a nurse because I really wanted to move to Australia. And I had read that if you were a nurse, you could apply for long-term residency in Australia. So there was a nursing program in Lancaster. It was affiliated with the hospital. It was actually one of the last diploma programs that existed in the United States. And I remember walking in and I was like, hey, I want to be a nurse. And they're like, great, we have a cohort starting next week. You want to start? And I'm like, I have a job. I have to give them 2 weeks notice. So it was kind of a crazy time where there weren't these like waiting lists for people to get into nursing programs. I ended up starting the following semester just because I didn't feel right about giving my job at the time just a week's notice. But yeah, I went to school right in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And as I said, I graduated with just what's called a nursing diploma. There was no associate's degree attached to it, no bachelor's, but you're eligible to sit for your boards. Yeah. So I sat for my boards and became a nurse.
Wow. Okay. So, when you became a nurse, was there some specialty when you were going through the program that stood out to you that you really wanted to pursue? Or were you, when you finished, you were just like, wherever I can get a job? What did that look like for you?
So the only thing that really ever called to me was emergency nursing. I remember being a teenager and watching the episodes of ER that used to be on NBC years ago. And I remember thinking how cool that would be. And again, since I didn't actually enroll in nursing school with the thought of really having this burning desire to be a nurse, I was like, oh, I'll just work in the ER. And fortunately, throughout nursing school, I discovered I really liked helping people. And the ER was that instant gratification. Like somebody would come in with, crushing chest pain or having that heart attack, and you would perform your interventions and you would see like an immediate result. So I fell in love with emergency nursing.
Yeah, instant gratification. So did you get it right out of school?
I did. I started with the hospital that the nursing program was connected to. So I'd done all of my clinicals there, and I got a job in their emergency department. They were a level 2 trauma center and the biggest hospital in the county. So we were a pretty busy ER. And I stayed in the ER for, I think it was the first 4 years.
Okay. So let's go back to the Australia thing. So when you started working as a nurse, were your plans still the same? You wanted to go to Australia, or did those change?
I did. I wanted to go to Australia, but kind of the age-old story, like girl meets boy and plans change. So I had met a boy at the time, and I never ended up going to Australia, but it got me into a profession that has become my lifelong passion.
Sure. Okay. So you worked in the emergency room for how long before you started traveling?
So I worked in the ER for 4 years. And then at the time I was toying with the idea of maybe going to anesthesia school. And they didn't consider the emergency department to be critical care. So I moved up to the trauma neuro ICU. Okay. And I did that for about a year. And I discovered that ICU nursing was really just not for me. I have a very deep appreciation for ICU nurses, but that was just not my style of nursing. So right after that, I got into travel nursing, and at first just took some local assignments. And then I ended up in California.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So when you went to, because this is fascinating, because I always say that I could never be, and I have so much respect for ER nurses and ICU nurses, because they are, for me, also specialties that I could never do. So what was it for you? Because you stepped into that role. What was it for you that you were not connected to ICU nursing? Because I know for me, drips, things like that, terrify me. So what was that for you? Where you just said, we're like, I'm just not?
I think it was part of the emergency department is every day is different. You're never sure what your day is going to look like. You're never sure what patients you're going to have, what's going to roll in the door. And in the ICU, there's a lot more predictability. Sometimes your patients are there for weeks, maybe even months. And they like to assign the same nurses to the same patients for continuity of care. So I knew almost inevitably what my day would look like before I walked in. I knew what patients I was going to have. I knew pretty much exactly what my day was going to look like. And for me, I think I just struggled with that because I enjoyed the unpredictability a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the same with the OR. Every day is different, and that freshness, keeping things fresh, I can relate to. Okay. So yeah, I'd like to ask that because I've heard that's the greatest thing about nursing is that there are so many different specialties and people that I just absolutely love their specialty for whatever reason it is, and that's what's so great about it is that there's so many options. Okay, so what sparked your interest in traveling? Why did you decide that you wanted to? Was it the same reason? You just want to keep things fresh and new and
Honestly, at the time, I had gotten a call from a recruiter, and she's like, "Hey, I have a local travel contract, within 45 minutes of where you're living, and they'll pay you X amount of dollars per hour." And it was significantly more than what I was making as a staff nurse in the hospital. And I was like, "Ooh, really? Like I can stay local and make more money?" So that I think was intriguing to me.
Mhm.
So I was like, "Sure, well, yeah, I'll do it."
Yeah.
And I ended up going to a massive ER at a very big level 1 trauma center, teaching hospital.
Yeah.
Um, and it was an incredible experience. It really was.
Yeah. Did you have any hesitation? I know some people chose, never to travel because they were too afraid of change. Or I guess if you're an ER nurse, you're kind of used to thinking on the fly and dealing with things on the fly. So I'm guessing that you didn't have too much hesitation on taking those assignments.
It was, I think the first one was a little nerve wracking just because I wasn't sure what to expect. I wasn't sure how much orientation I would get. I wasn't sure, what their charting system looked like. I wasn't sure about anything. And walking from an environment where I had only ever done clinicals and all of my nursing practice at one facility, walking into someplace entirely different was a little nerve wracking.
Yeah.
But after that, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, got your foot in the door. It wasn't so bad. Okay. So how long were you traveling there? Was it a long contract or?
So it was a 3-month contract. And then at the end of that contract, that's kind of right when that really bad financial crisis happened, like 2008, 2009.
Yep.
And they canceled all the travelers' contracts and went on a hiring freeze. So I couldn't have even gotten a job there if I wanted to. So then I kind of just filled in with some per diem work. I actually became a night shift house supervisor at a nursing home for a little bit.
Oh, wow.
Just whatever I could do to, pay some bills. Yeah. And then after about 6 months of that, that's when I called up my recruiter. I'm like, you got to find me something.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how you ended up in California.
It is. Yes.
Yeah.
I called her on a Monday morning and she called me back Monday night. And she's like, you leave from Modesto, California on Sunday. And I'm like, okay.
Wow. All right. So you picked up and left and went to Modesto. Did you have any plans on it being like a short contract and heading back home? Or were you like, maybe this is a new change for me?
I remember packing up my little 2002 Volvo with what I thought I would need for 13 weeks, packed up my Beagle, and we drove 3,000 miles cross country. And I remember my mom crying at the time. And she's like, you're leaving? I'm like, I'll be back in 13 weeks. Like, this is nothing.
Right.
And yeah, like I said, it just, one contract turned into 2. The hospital was really great. And at the end of my first contract, they're like, oh, stay for one more. And then at the end of the second contract, they're like, oh, just sign on as staff for a year. Like, come on, you can save money and then you can move back home. And then I remember I had one foot out the door. I was moving back to the East Coast. And again, same old story, girl meets boy. So I met my now husband and he's from here. So,
and here you are.
Here I am
in California. Wow. Yep. I love that. Okay. So did you end up signing on at the same facility or?
I did. So I've been at my current facility for 15 years now.
Okay.
It'll be 15 officially in January, but, and I worked the first 4 maybe the first 5 in the ER.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I had my son, when I came back to work after maternity leave, the 12-hour shifts were a bit rough. I would leave for work in the morning and my son wasn't up yet. And I'd come home at night and he was already in bed for the night. And working like 3 12s back to back, I couldn't wrap my brain around not seeing my kid for 3 days.
Yeah.
So I remember talking to my manager at the time and I was like, I need something different. I don't know what I need, but I need to be able to see my kid. And he looked at me and he's like, oh, well, I think the trauma program needs a little bit of help. Why don't you go check in with the trauma program manager on Monday and, we'll see if that's a good fit for you. And I did. And it turns out it was a fantastic fit. So for the last 9 years, I've been with the trauma program.
And what did that, what does the schedule change look like?
So I currently do Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day.
Yep.
No nights, no weekends, no holidays. And it's nice. Like it gives me a lot of flexibility. I can drop my kids off for school in the morning. I can be home every night to help with homework and make dinner.
Yeah.
And it removed me from direct patient care, which at the time I was happy about. I had some health concerns after I had my son, and being away from the bedside ended up to be a really good thing.
Right. So in the trauma world, what does that look like for you now that you're not bedside?
So I do performance improvement and quality, some regulatory compliance, some education. My role is to help ensure that the trauma program stays verified through the American College of Surgeons. So I work very heavily with chart reviews, finding deviations in standards of care, finding opportunities for improvement, finding physician delays or errors, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. So is it a certain role? What is the title? Trauma coordinator or?
Every hospital calls it something a little bit different. My hospital currently calls it a clinical effectiveness coordinator. But the title that the American College of Surgeons gives it is trauma performance improvement coordinator.
I see. I love that. That's fascinating. That they need something like that in the OR. I've never seen anything like that in the OR, but I would imagine that something like that would be incredibly valuable. I love that. It's very fascinating to me. Okay, so then that sounds like that naturally led you into the legal nurse world. Yes. Tell me a little bit about how that came about.
So I remember getting out of nursing school and seeing those Vicky Malazzo, ads for being a legal nurse consultant. And I always thought that that'd be a really cool thing to do. But at the time I was really new in my career and I was like, I maybe someday, not right now.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I would say within the last 6-7 months that it kind of started entering my mind again. And as I started really seriously looking into it, because I'd always kind of kept it in the back of my mind, it'd be something really cool to do. I would love to do that. I just, not right now. It's not the time. But earlier this year, I started really thinking like, okay, if not now, then when? And the more I looked into it, I was like, I feel like this is kind of what I've already been doing for the last 9 months.
Yeah.
So then I just started, I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a go. I'm really going to, give it my all. And this is the direction I think I'd really like to go.
Yeah. We have a very similar story in that I used to get the same exact flyers and it was new and early in my career where I was like, well, I don't have the chops for this. I'm not ready for something like this, but it was always something fascinating. So it's funny that you say that. I think we all got those flyers, it's more power to her. She made a name for herself and all of us nurses that have been nurses for a long time know her name, right? So
absolutely.
That's so great. And the other thing I was going to say is what I love about this podcast is that meeting legal nurses that have been doing it for a really long time and meeting legal nurses that have not. And we're all at different stages. We're all in the same community. We're all nurses and we all have value to bring to the table. And so it's really refreshing to hear, all different sides of this, like making that decision, jumping in. So when you decided to jump into this early in the year, when you said, okay, this is a calling, because again, I think we all kind of have that. I had this, like the Vicky Milazzo piece of it. I also have that same calling where it was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Did you decide to take a course or did you decide to jump into a community or did you know someone already doing it? How did that look for you?
So I'm an extreme type A person, and I'm the kind of person that researches everything to death before I do anything. Yeah. So I spent the first couple of months just researching and looking up everything I could possibly think to look up. I researched, the different communities out there, the different programs out there, the different, the certification versus no certification. If you name it, I probably looked it up and I have pages and pages of notes.
Okay.
For the first few months, it was just me researching furiously. And then I sat down with my husband and I was like, hey, I think this is what I'd like to do. And he looks at me, he goes, I've never heard of that. And I'm like, well, it's a thing. He's like, are you sure it's a thing? I'm like, yeah, I'm sure this is the thing. And so I looked into a bunch of different programs and I had connected actually with Abigail Stanley. Mm-hmm. And she has a program called Legal Nurse Secrets. So I decided to enroll in that program. Mm-hmm. I liked the fact that it was a self-paced program because I know me, like if I can do it on my own schedule, I will get it done a lot faster than if I have to wait for somebody else's schedule. So I enrolled in that program and it's been fantastic. Mm-hmm. It really helped me with everything from setting up the foundation of the business, which I had not done as much research on as I probably should have. I had done all the research on what a legal nurse consultant is, but I didn't know how to set up
the business part. Yeah, sure.
The stuff they don't teach you in nursing school.
I was going to say, yes, no nurses were taught how to run a business.
Right.
Yeah.
So just like, how to set up your business, how to market, again, something they don't teach nurses how to do.
Right.
I know how to start an IV and titrate a levothyroxine. But
yes.
Business marketing is a
totally different aspect. Well, I love the fact that you did all the research. Some of us just kind of jump in, have a feeling, and some of us do research. There's nothing wrong with it. Honestly, there's nothing with any of that. I always say, if you choose the wrong path, then it's always a lesson learned. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you've gone through the program, you've learned the business side of it. Besides for just the business side being a surprise, were there any other surprises to you in what you see in the community or what you've heard or what you've experienced or during your training? Any sort of surprises to you?
I think the biggest surprise is how welcoming the legal nurse community is. I unfortunately have seen far too much of the nurses eating their young type mentality, or like the toxic nursing culture where, nurses can get very judgy of other nurses in their department. So I think just the amount of legal nurses that are willing to help out, that are willing to answer questions, that are willing to, let you bounce ideas off of them. Or anytime I've had an issue, I've had probably no less than 5 other legal nurses like, hey, here's what worked for me, or hey, I have some time to chat later today if you'd like. So I think that was the biggest surprise, is just how welcoming the community.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally relate to that as well. Um, when I first jumped into it, it was really surprising to me just how kind people were with their time. You're just not used to that. And like you said, hey, you have 5 minutes. I can talk to you now. I'd rather talk, explain this over the phone than texting you or, messaging you. Like you want to call me to help me with my issue. Okay. Thank you. That's so, gracious of you. And that's another reason why I wanted to do this podcast, was just really to highlight all of those people, because it was something that I didn't expect either. I expected there to be a community and, it's just kind of there, but really the kindness and it's funny that you say the eating your young thing, because I literally was re-listening to the episode that came out this week. And we talked about eating your young. I think it comes up in just about every episode, because we've all experienced that, and we've all. And it's funny too, because a lot of us still are working bedside, but this business is not working bedside; is really working independently. But what we love is a kind community. So I find it very interesting that it's like we're working independently, but we thrive on a kind community, and that's what we have. So I love that you said that. I love that you've had a really good experience with that as well. So now that you have, gotten your feet wet and you've got, you're like, you've jumped in. I know I didn't find you. You found me. You found me, and I started to look at your content on LinkedIn, and I was like, I love your content. It's fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about what, because I think also when you start this business, and I'm thinking of certain people in particular who may not listen to this episode, but when they start, I think that marketing themselves becomes a little bit terrifying. Mm-hmm. So for you, what did that look like when you decided, okay, I'm going to put myself out there? Because obviously, you learn the skill. And so how did you make that decision to just like go for it? Was it hard? Or
I think I started by I looked at it as, let's just get to know people. Like, let's just form connections. I've heard it said before that people want to work with people that they know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, let's just get myself out there. Like, let's form connections with people. And I don't just want to form connections with attorneys. I want to form connections with legal nurses and with physicians and kind of anyone surrounding what it is I do, because everyone has their own little nuggets of wisdom that they can share, and their own, knowledge that they can contribute to. I love to learn. So to my overall just knowledge base.
Yep.
And I just started reaching out and trying to connect with people and interacting with their content. And I think the hardest thing for me was to try to figure out what to personally post. Mm-hmm. And then I was talking to my husband about it the one night, and he's like, just be you.
Yep.
I was like, well, that's easier said than done. He's like, why?
Yeah.
I was like, oh. He's like, so just talk about what you know, what you want to talk about. And he's like, people are either going to like you or not like you. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm just, my content from a place of, this is what I know. This is what's going on in my life. And, hopefully I form the right connections with people who appreciate that or learn something from it.
Yeah. I think that's why I resonated with your content, was because I'm a huge fan of that. In fact, I have the longest episode of mine is talking in depth about that with a LinkedIn strategist who used to be an attorney. And we go in depth about that particular thing. because truthfully, no one can argue you. And that's what I always have remembered from past businesses and sharing things on social media and, stepping into a space like LinkedIn. You don't typically see that content. And so I think that's what, we're hesitant on sharing that. But the greatest thing about that is that no one can argue with you and your story. It's like, this is my story. And people can argue facts, but you can't argue your story. And so I think it takes bravery to do that. I think that not enough people are doing that out there, and that's why I'm really happy to hear that that's how you made that decision. I think people are I think people are afraid to put themselves out there as well because of being judged. And, maybe it is that nursing world of, it's kind of expecting to be judged. But, and the reason I'm kind of repeating all of this is because there are a lot of brand new legal nurses that listen to this that, kind of want that little bit of courage, right? Or permission. I would say that on here, it's like, you're giving people permission. You're giving people permission to be themselves. And so you starting out in this, it's like you didn't know the business side, but now you understand it. You didn't know the marketing side because you had that conversation with your husband, and now you understand it. And you put your 2 feet forward and put yourself out there and make connections. And that's exactly how we connected. And you were so gracious to do this episode, and kind of a last minute, hey, yeah, I had someone back out. Would you be available? I love your stuff. So those connections really go far, and in making a name for yourself. And so everything that you said, I was like, yes. I mean, that's exactly it. It's like, that's the magic ticket, the golden ticket. It's really just like, how do you make yourself known, your name known in a community that's really kind? But there's a lot of nurses out there, and it's really making those connections and repeating those connections, because you say hi to one person and then you don't say hi again. It's very easy to fall off the. But if you say hi 5 times, you'll be remembered. And then when it comes time for that particular person to need your services or skills, or even help from you, they'll remember you. So It's really simple. The magic formula, that's what I was trying to. The magic formula, it's very simple. It's creating these relationships and not being afraid to put yourself out there, and putting yourself out there as you. It's simple. It's easier said than done by most, but hopefully you've given people, that little extra push. And I'm sure that you'll get messages in your LinkedIn thanking you for, okay, maybe they just got a little bit braver, to share. I would want nothing more to see more legal nurses sharing content like that. It's enjoyable to read, in a space that it's kind of boring. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's kind of boring. It really is. So why not stand out, right? I mean, it's easy. We all want to stand out. You got to be a little brave. But, you share what you feel like you can share. You don't have to share your whole life story, but there's a way to tell a story. So I commend you for that. And that will only, continue to benefit you and stand out. And so I love that. So what kind of tips would you give someone that's, I think this week, I feel like there's a lot of people that are just like hopping in these groups now, and they're like, okay, I'm just getting started. What do I do? What kind of tips would you give someone that asks you that question?
So I think the biggest couple is LinkedIn is amazing. LinkedIn is fantastic for making connections. It's actually how I got my first client, was through LinkedIn, and it wasn't even a whole overt marketing. I don't think I realized I was marketing at the time. But it's a fantastic platform for making connections, for finding those people that you're going to want to work with, for showcasing your skills. I think another tip would be to just educate yourself. As I mentioned earlier, as nurses, we don't get that business side of education in nursing school. And what you truly are doing is you're running a business, and there's a whole separate aspect to it that you're going to need to learn. And the better of a foundation you can give yourself when you start with the business side of it, the stronger your business will be going forward. So just taking that time to educate yourself. Don't be afraid to invest a little bit in yourself. This is going to be something new. It's not going to be something that, you can just show up and automatically know everything about. Even myself, like being used to doing chart reviews and that sort of thing, the things I'm looking for are a little bit different. The way I'm formatting a report is a little bit different.
Right.
So don't be afraid to learn, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there. And you may hear no, and you may have to try a few different things, a few different ways before they work. But the important thing is to not stop trying. As long as you continue to put one foot in front of the other and keep making that forward movement, then you're eventually going to make this succeed.
Yeah.
So don't get tripped up or stumbled by, somebody telling you no, or no, thank you, not right now. Or, you try a marketing technique and you get no response, or, whatever it may be. Just keep making that forward movement, because you will find something that works, and you will find somebody to eventually say yes. If you hear 20 no's and the 21st one is a yes, then it was worth it.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you said that. In fact, I was thinking of, I think it's like up there in that book, in that shelf there. It's called Go for No. It's a very small book. And the promise is really the more no's you get, just brings you closer to the yeses. And so when you go in there and you just kind of expect the no's, then your first yes is like, wow, oh my gosh. So versus, you're hoping you don't get no's because nobody wants to get rejected. But if you go in there thinking, I'm going to go for the no, I'm going to just ask, or you're going to try new marketing techniques. So and you go for the no, then you're just closer to the yes. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. But yeah, investing in little things, like a book like that is a business related book. There are so many books out there. If anybody needs a suggestion, feel free to reach out to me, because this whole bookshelf here, if you're watching this, the whole bookshelf here is all of those. Half of them are business related, and half of them are personal development related. There is maybe the fiction books on the shelf. So I'm a huge fan of educating yourself when it comes to business and marketing, and try, you just got to try things, and you won't know until you find what works for other people and try it, see if it works for you. Like the LinkedIn thing has worked out very, very well for you. But for me, I didn't jump into LinkedIn initially. It did not work for me. In fact, only recently has business started to show up through LinkedIn. And that's okay, because everybody has their own different story. You try different things and you don't get discouraged. And one other thing I wanted to kind of repeat, something that you had said earlier about networking and relationships, is don't be afraid to reach out to people. Like you said, those that are in the community have been really helpful to you in, answering your questions, things like that. Don't be afraid to reach out to people and ask the questions, because people are willing to help and willing to answer, or maybe they're struggling with the same thing. Sitting and watching on the sidelines may not get you very far, but actually being brave enough to answer. Nobody bites in this community. Nobody bites, I promise. reach out and ask the question. I know I get questions all the time because of the podcast, I think. And more than happy to help. We think we all are. And if you didn't ask the question, then we wouldn't know, then maybe you'll get discouraged anyways. So you had said that earlier, you've made relationships with legal nurses who are ahead of you, or, have gone through things that you haven't gone through yet. And they've been really helpful. So, more permission to reach out and say hello more than once.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you reach out and you say hello and somebody doesn't respond right away, everybody is busy, and don't take it personally, wait a little bit and reach out again, because maybe they looked at your message and meant to reply and something happened, and
I'm totally guilty of it. It's so true. I think actually it's funny that you say, I think maybe we'll create this new rule here. And I don't know what it's called, but reach out twice, reach out 3 times. And it's okay to reach out on multiple occasions, because I know I'm guilty of it. I'll get messages and I'm in the middle of something and it's like, oh, I want to reply. And then I just never do. And then the person shows up again. I'm like, oh yes, So, and I think it falls with attorneys as well. They are really busy. And so if you've sent out emails, or maybe they've sent you something and you haven't heard back from them, don't be afraid to reach out again. So we've got the Go for No book. Let's just say reach out twice, but rule, the reach out twice rule.
I love it. I love it.
Well, I appreciate you being here and sharing your wisdom, and I look forward to seeing more of your content on LinkedIn and just seeing your success. And like I said, I know that you'll get plenty of messages in your inbox from this episode asking you questions, or supporting you and saying hello. So, can you let everybody know where they can find you?
Sure. So I am on LinkedIn, just under Ashley Moss. I also have a website, the-legal-nurse.com, and there's a way to contact me through there. And then just my email is ashley@the-legal-nurse.com. There you go.
Perfect. Awesome. That will all be in the show notes. And like I said, I appreciate you being here and sharing your story. And I've gotten to know you better now. And you're another California girl. So
yes,
us on the West Coast.
Absolutely.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in this fun conversation on the Limitless Legal Nurse Consulting podcast. I hope you found this episode as inspiring and empowering as I always do. And I hope that you share this episode with your friends. If you enjoyed it, I would love it if you could leave us a review or comment, as I would love to share them in the future episodes. Or hop on over into my DMs and send me a quick message. I can be found on Instagram at anna.b.gray, on my website at limitlesslnc.com, and over on LinkedIn at anna.gray. And I want you to remember, you are limitless. Until next time.